Welcome, everyone, to the Daily Fantasy Lines NFL podcast. This is for the Thursday through Monday slate. It's going to be brief and to the point. I know a lot of you guys are working, so you'll probably end up watching us after the fact. If you are watching the live stream, get all your questions in on the right-hand side. You can see where I've posted in there a few times. Ask me any of your questions. I'll get to those before the end of the show. We're just going to go site by site, position by position. That's what our optimizer is spitting out. I won't do this every week, but I will, on the Thursday slates where the contests are still relatively big. I will show what our optimizer is producing ahead and move over to that. We'll start with quarterbacks, and we'll start on FanDuel. Give me just 1 second to get the screen sharing set up. Russ Wilson is probably the top overall quarterback on both sites this week. He's been an absolute machine. I think his floor has been like 23 or 22 fantasy points over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Basically, if that offense does anything, he's the main reason for that. You can see I've got FanDuel pulled up here. I'm already sorting by the quarterbacks, but let's go ahead and take a look at the optimal lineups. Looks like at the quarterback position, you're seeing a good mix of guys: Cam Newton, Trevor Seaman Dumpster, Russell Wilson. All these guys are in play. I have a really sour taste in my mouth from Trevor. Good when you're talking about Seaman Dumpster. But I just, I don't know if I can play him again. But it does give you access to the game. And Indianapolis is 30th. I think Indy is 30th against quarterbacks against passing games. So that does put Seaman in play if you do want to pay down. Personally, if I'm going to spend up for Cam, I feel like I might as well just pay for Russ Wilson because Russ Wilson is a lot safer. He's a lot more consistent to consider. But as you can see, the Seaman lines will get you Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. It will also get you access to Jack Doyle, who, even though he has, on paper, a tough matchup, Denver's not perfect against tight end position, so I still like him. The best game of his career, really, I would assume since high school last week. We're all, or most of us, within the inner circle are well aware that Drake doesn't have a whole lot of carries throughout his career. That includes college, but he finally got a big workload last week. He looked great. I think he had somewhere around 200 all-purpose yards. He didn't find the end zone, but I think that was just bad luck. Really, really close to getting in there a few times. And at 6.5K, I think you can't go wrong with paying for him. The question is, are you going to pay for Le'Veon Bell or are you going to pay for Todd Gurley? On FanDuel, you get a stronger receiving core, it looks like, if you go with Todd Gurley over Le'Veon Bell. But even though Gurley's really good, I find it really hard to fade Le'Veon Bell, especially given the matchup against the Patriots. Patriots defense looked pretty horrific against the Dolphins, and Le'Veon Bell got a lot of red zone work this past week. I believe he had 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 receiving. I really like Bell over Gurley, but I'm not going to fault you if you decide to go the Gurley route. Antonio Brown is the clear-cut play of the week. You're going to see this on both sites. To fit him and Bell on DraftKings, but our optimizer's doing it. I'm not sure if I feel comfortable with it yet, but Antonio Brown, Julio Jones are the top 2 wideouts. Not even close. D.D. Westbrook, he's been an absolute machine. The only issue with him is the game flow, or how much is Jacksonville actually going to have to pass in that 13-point spread. But Blake Bortles has been good. D.D. Westbrook has been good. Really have no issues playing him. Ted Ginn, Devin Funchess, Doug Baldwin. When you get to that 3rd wide receiver spot, it's really tough on FanDuel to pick the right guy. But I am liking Ginn and D.D. Westbrook. Funchess, I like him more if you're pairing him with Cam in tournaments if you're going to go that route. Jack Doyle is the consensus on this Thursday slate at the tight end position on FanDuel. And I just noticed this looking at the schedule today, it looks like we have Saturday games. So that dilutes the main slate pool even more. But this is for the Thursday breakdown, so that's what I'm going to stay on track with here. Kai Forbath is the top projected kicker overall. Robbie Gould's probably the best value. Defense, there's a lot of defensive options this week. There's 3 at the top that I'm really high on, and the Saints seem to be the best value on FanDuel. Run through quarterbacks on FanDuel: Cam Newton, Russ Wilson, Nick Foles, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, Kirk Cousins, and Seaman Dumpster. Of course, you can also put Ben Roethlisberger on that list. I do like stacking Ben with Antonio Brown. They've been extremely pass heavy, and I think we're going to see the same thing against the Pats this week. They're 400. I don't think we're going to get 500 yards again out of Big Ben, but you could see 400 downs with Antonio Brown getting the majority of that. So I like that stack in tournaments. Russell Wilson, again, if you can afford Russell Wilson anywhere you play him, really safe. They have a lot to play for. This is a huge matchup against the Rams. Big-time playoff implications for Russell Wilson there. Nick Foles owns here. He came in and had a good, a few good throws last game coming in for Wentz. It is the Giants. They're terrible. His price point is cheap. I would lean more towards Foles in tournaments. I don't think I'm going to go that route in cash. Things that can go wrong with a new quarterback coming in. Matt Ryan plays the Buccaneers. You don't have to say anything. He plays the Buccaneers. It's pretty. Alex Smith or Cousins. I like Cousins. Keith, I just saw your question in here. And no, Gary Skinner, I'm not going to talk about Canadian football today. It's pretty much it at the quarterback position. Let's go over to DraftKings. Take a look at the quarterback position over there. Cam Newton's priced a lot lower on DraftKings. Roethlisberger. So I think we're going to see them make a lot of optimal lineups. We'll take a look at the optos, walk through everything. For those that are unfamiliar with the site, how it operates, basically players, I project these players to score a certain amount of points. The optimizer spits out the top projected lineups for DraftKings or FanDuel. On DraftKings, they do have rules in place. Be sure to lock in a few players before you run the optimizer. Yourself from bans or from getting in trouble from DraftKings. Be sure to lock in 2 players when you run the optimizer. This is just a sample, so I'm just going to show you what pops out. You're going to use this for your personal lines. Be sure to lock in a few players before you play on DraftKings. Thank you, Eric. Senor Goodwin, wide receiver 3. Are you just talking long, Keith, or are you talking daily here? And FanDuel or DraftKings, so I can get back to that question. The optimals, as you can tell, they're going really top-heavy with Bell and Antonio Brown. Takes up most of the quarterback spots. Kenyon Drake, basically a lock this week. And then you're looking at Samaje Perine and Mike Davis. Personally, I really like the Ben Roethlisberger line over here, but I also hate that it doesn't have Le'Veon Bell. So pick your poison this week. Terrence Williams at 3.6K is probably your best bet at a pure punt play this week. Position. Jermaine Kearse is right there with him. Those are our top 2 values. Do you love playing them in cash? Probably not, especially Terrence Williams. But Antonio Brown's going to go out and drop 25 to 30 fantasy points. And you think Le'Veon Bell's going to do the same like they did this past week. There. I don't really like any value defenses this week, which makes building extremely tough on DraftKings. That defense can cost you quite a bit of money this year. But if you do decide you want to punt, I'll go through the punt options. And for those that are new to daily fantasy, punt is just a really cheap player. Well, that's what a punt play is. A value is basically whoever rates the best for their price tag. But that's pretty much it for DraftKings. Austin Hooper, Eric Ebron. Tight end's really ugly again. It's really hard to spend up. Julio Jones definitely needs to be mentioned because they play the Buccaneers. And I believe when he played the Buccaneers earlier this season, it's when he had like 235 yards and 2 touchdowns, put up like 50 fantasy points, something along those lines. And we did play him that week. I do like getting him in. I just don't necessarily love fading Le'Veon Bell. Julio in tournaments, especially stacked with Matt Ryan, is a strong play. Let's go ahead and look at the for DraftKings. So I can show you the top per dollar values. Blaine Gabbert, we're probably not going to go there, but it is a good matchup against the Redskins, the road. I don't like, that he's somewhat turnover prone. That he's just not a good. He's a good quarterback. He's not great. Cam Newton, I think, is the obvious play, but you will see a lot of people go down to Nick Foles or Blaine Gabbert. Drew Brees plays the Jets. That's something to consider. It looks like he's at home as well, so that's a big boost for him. Matt Ryan, we've talked about against the Buccaneers. Probably my favorite tournament quarterback, pairing him with Julio Jones. I think with all the Antonio Brown attention, Julio's ownership is going to fall a little bit. Berger also loves stacking Schuster and also Antonio Brown in tournaments. And as we saw, I won $8,000 with an Antonio Brown Le'Veon Bell stack. So you could even mix because of his pass catching ability, and you could do a full-on Pittsburgh Steelers stack. It is really hard to believe that New England would go out and throw out back-to-back duds. I have to think that they really show up. And this is a high-profile game. I'm not 100% sure on the exact playoff implications, but New England's 10-3 and 2. So I would assume this would keep New England alive for throughout the playoffs, which is pretty important. Trevor Seaman Dumpster, Blake Bortles, Kirk Cousins. These are all second-tier guys. Russell Wilson, it's just so hard to fit him on DraftKings. Dollar savings that you get to Newton on DraftKings is much bigger than it is on FanDuel because they have loose pricing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at running backs on DraftKings, then to FanDuel and look at running backs there. Mike Davis, he's assumed to be healthy. I think he's going to play this week. $4,000 is really cheap for him. He's giving them. I picked him up in my season-long league. He's just underpriced, and we have to think that he's going to get a red zone carry or two. He's also somewhat involved in the passing game. And I see you asking a question against me, C.J. Anderson or Doyle. I will. Well, let's see. I think I can just here full PPR. We're already on DraftKings. So, and again for any of you guys that play season long, this is exactly what I do for season long. I'm one step away from making the championship, so it seems to be working pretty well. But I just look at the projections for the two guys that I need to make a decision on. So C.J. Anderson at 11.7, Doyle at 10.81. Anderson would be who I would play against myself tonight, Dan. I shouldn't, but hopefully C.J. Anderson sucks and the projections are wrong, so I can make it to the championship. Sorry, let me pivot back to running backs. Got a little off topic there. Samaje Perine, good volume, good price. The matchup isn't necessarily great, which is why I personally like Mike Davis a little bit more. But you can't argue the volume for Samaje Perine. Kenyon Drake, we've already talked about, probably my top play of the week. I'm not going to fade him against Buffalo. While Buffalo does do a relatively good job of controlling opponents' pass games, they really struggle with running backs. And Kenyon Drake just ran all over New England. I know New England's not the best defense in the world, but they are formidable, and they've definitely improved since the beginning of the season. And they just couldn't stop Kenyon Drake. So huge floor. He's probably an 8K running back right now. We're getting him at, $1,000 discount. Tariq Cohen, probably only a tournament play. Same goes for Alex Collins, although Alex Collins looks really good. The only thing is that, three running back split that they have back there with Buck Allen and Woodhead really cuts into his upside potential. Jerick McKinnon, I do know that he was going through some injury stuff this week on how he's doing, but probably not a cash game play. Duke Johnson, not really a cash game play. Really tough matchup. Baltimore's probably one of the top defenses of the week. Talked about him. Love him. 9.3K isn't cheap, but Le'Veon Bell can pay off that price tag against the Patriots. We saw what Kenyon Drake just did against them, and I don't expect this to be any different. Appears to be the lead back over Devontae Booker again. How long is it going to last? I don't know. Indy's run defense is decent. They're not as bad as people make them out to be, and I think Seaman's going to do a lot of damage through the air if I can rely on that in cash games. DeMarco Murray, Todd Gurley, again, I just like Bell more in tournaments. Kamara, same thing. I like Kamara in tournaments. And that's pretty much Burkhead not in the opto. If Burkhead's not in the opto, are you sure Burkhead's not in the opto? I'll look into that, Keith. I'm not sure why he's not in the opto. I don't know if he's going through an injury. Let me check his status right now. Yeah, it doesn't look like he's injured. What I do, Keith, and this is for the speed of the optimizer, I remove players that I use. Oh, yeah. Okay, I see what was happening. Okay, he is in there. Gotcha. Cool. All right, moving on. Let's look at running backs on FanDuel real quick. Receivers, tight ends, defenses, and even kickers for those of you that play FanDuel. Again, if you have season-long or daily questions, ask them in the chat on YouTube. There is a chat room on the right-hand side. You just have to be logged in. Looks like Gary hopes that Seaman Dumpster is on the platinum line. I love losing. Yeah, had a really bad game and then had a really good game, and now he faces one of the worst pass defenses in the league. So he could make the platinum line. I'm sure that Gary would bitch about it the entire time. Let's see, running backs, FanDuel, Kenyon Drake, lock. Bell is the only tough decision here in cash games. On Bell, it's not really that close for me. The optimizer actually has Gurley rated a little bit higher on a per dollar basis. So you can see the 2.33 to the 2.31. But Le'Veon Bell's my favorite running back play of the week, along with Kenyon Drake. Giovanni Bernard, Lamar Miller, Leonard Fournette, Samaje Perine, Mark Ingram, Mike Davis. You can go cheap to help fit Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. And I really can't argue with that because they're two of the top plays on the slate. What you want to do personally. Let's go ahead and look at wide receivers on FanDuel while we're over here. Antonio Brown, lock-o-potamus. Lock in Antonio Brown. Don't fucking think twice about it, especially on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I could see if you want to go more balanced. You want to get Le'Veon Bell in, and then you want to have mid-tier wide receivers instead of punting. I'm okay with that. But on FanDuel, lock in Antonio Brown, Julio, if you can. Devin Funchess, that's a really high price tag for me on him. But it's hard to argue with the matchup and the upside. He's just – Adam Thielen's a superstar that somehow doesn't get talked about enough. Receivers in the league, he's consistent, he's money. It's like he never has a bad game. Doug Baldwin, Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams. Adams gets Rodgers back, a lot of upside there. Adams hasn't always been Rodgers' favorite target, so it's interesting to see how that plays out. I would prefer to just stack Adams with Rodgers in tournaments. Westbrook, Marquise Goodwin, Ted. These are some of the best value plays on FanDuel in terms of going under that $6,700, $6,800 threshold. Again, D.D. Westbrook has to deal with a horrible game script if it goes to plan. I'm not 100% sure that Jacksonville's just going to sit there and blow them out, but if they do, it's really going to hurt his production. Jamison Crowder, a little overpriced, but still like him in that spot. Michael Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster, Juju quite a bit this week. I like him in tournaments, like I mentioned earlier, stacked with Ben and Antonio Brown. AJ Green, I just can't do it anymore. Not a good matchup. Demaryius Thomas, great matchup. Just not sure I can trust him in cash. I probably will play him in season long, though. Des Bryant had a breakout game. I think people might chase that back down to earth because, let's face it, he's not a great wide receiver. Larry Fitzgerald, Stephon Diggs, Jarvis Landry, Kenny Stills. Not much else to see there. Gurley over Bell. Hey, man, if that's what you want to do, it's just, I don't know. No, I like Bell. I like Bell over Gurley. The Patriots suck, and they really suck in pass coverage against running backs. I could see Bell facing a linebacker in the slot or even out wide and just torching him. So you've got that aspect of it. I'm going to pivot back over to DraftKings wide receivers, defenses, and on Fanders. Yes, Kid Lou, I will be doing an NBA breakdown. It's going to be at 4 o'clock Central Standard Time daily or for the I will post that on Twitter in the near future. Let's go ahead and take a look at DraftKings wideouts. Antonio Brown and Julio Jones be up there, obviously. Jermaine Kearse, Terrence Williams are the top 2 rated values. They are underpriced, and there's no denying that. Come without risk. I do like the matchups for both. You've got Kearse against a New Orleans defense that'll probably be playing some prevent at some point in this game. Expect New Orleans to blow out the Jets at home. I know the Jets have been good, and I don't like hating on the Jets because I think they're a solid team. But New Orleans is favored by 17 points. I mean, let's get real. So I think that's a great game script for Jermaine Kearse, even though the Jets are only projected to score like 15 points. We're just looking for, PPR production from him. Terrence Williams faces a weak Oakland secondary, really coming back to life, and I think that's going to open up the passing game a lot. I think you're going to see Terrence Williams. I don't think he's going to go out and break 100 yards like he did a few weeks ago. But if I need him to get 8 or 9 fantasy points, I'm going to go ahead and plug him in and hope that I can get that. Roger Lewis, you just can't trust the Giants offense in any capacity right now. Well, you can never trust Brandon LaFell, especially in that matchup. Jamison Crowder, I do like him at 5.6K. Dontrell Inman, Juju Smith-Schuster, Julio Jones. Demaryius Thomas, I like him a lot more on DraftKings than FanDuel. Because we don't need him to score a touchdown on DraftKings at 5.6K. We just need him to catch a lot of passes within the realm of possibilities today. And great matchup. His price point's even better on DraftKings. No issues going with him. If you're going with the mid-tier approach and you're not going to spend up on Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, AJ Green, Josh Doxson, Sterling Shepard, and Grant, there's not a whole lot to see here. Once you get past like the top 10 or 15 guys, there's really not much that you're going to like. Let's look at tight ends. The top play, if you're spending up, would be Travis Kelce. But as you can tell on DraftKings, they price the tight ends, the good tight ends, way too high. And they pretty much force you to go with value guys. Austin Hooper, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Charles Clay. I got to say, I really like Charles Clay this week at 3K. They're not going to be playing in a blizzard again, I don't think. I haven't checked the weather report, but it doesn't happen back-to-back weeks very often. He's a legitimate red zone target, and if they're going to throw the ball, I think Tyrod's coming back, so that's a good spot for him. Hooper is just he's just solid. He just kind of gets by, and the matchup against Tampa Bay is gold. Austin Seferian-Jenkins against the Saints, again, great game script for them. Good chance that he finds the end zone, and that's something to consider. He's reliant throughout his career. Eric Ebron, Ricky Seals-Jones, David Njoku. Again, if you want to spend 4.9K on Jimmy Graham, that's mid-tier play. But our optimizer is going to go with value in that situation. Head to defenses on DraftKings real quick, since that's all we've got left, and then I'll hop back over to FanDuel and look at tight ends, defense, and kickers. Redskins are the top value against Blaine Gabbert. If you are going to spend down and try to save money, I think you have to take the Redskins. I really don't see many other options here. The Packers or the Falcons, and they're just not trustworthy. But I could see the Redskins having a decent game. If you want to save $1,000, there's a lot on DraftKings, and plug in the Redskins over, say, the Ravens or the Saints, or the Jaguars against Houston. The Jaguars are overpriced. I personally like the Ravens, just like the optimizer in this situation. To me, it's between the ends, and there's not much else to see here. Let's hop back over to FanDuel, finish that up. Don't see any more questions in the chat. Again, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll get automatic notifications when we go live with any breakdowns. So be sure to hit the subscribe button to your Google account so you can interact on the chat, questions in so I can answer them in real time. On FanDuel, Jimmy Graham, Evan Ingram, Rob Gronkowski, Hunter Henry, Travis Kelce, Delaney Walker, Kyle Rudolph, Austin Hooper. These guys are in play. I like Doyle quite a bit at 5.2K. Tough to fit at 6.7. Ingram, also tough to fit, and I'm not going to rely on the Giants' offense. Gronkowski priced. I don't know why his price point is always so high. I know the upside's there, but Hunter Henry, I don't like him splitting with Antonio Gates, and I really don't like the matchup against Kansas City. Severely overpriced. Him and Gronk are more tournament plays on FanDuel. Delaney Walker, and Hooper, Vernon Davis. When I do the main slate breakdown, I'll look at some of these guys a little bit more, but I like Jack Doyle's matchup tonight at 5.2K. Defense, Saints by a few miles. They're just underpriced. The team total, the fact that the Jets are going to have to be pushing the entire game, they're going to force things. There's going to be interceptions. There's going to be fumbles. There could be a punt return or a kick return, to be honest. 4.6K is just too low. That's almost the same price as the Redskins, who are a punt play on DraftKings. They made a pretty big error here, and I would just plug in the Saints and move on. Kicker opto's been pretty solid this season. I would recommend just 4 Bath or Gold. I don't think you have to go much beyond that. If you have the money, if you don't have the money, play Robbie Gold. I think as a whole, the FanDuel optimizer for kickers has done a great job this season. And that pretty much wraps it up. The website is dailyfantasylines.com. You subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at dailyftsylines. That's dailyftsylines. We have free trials for all sports on the website if you are a new site, so be sure to check that out. And that's all I've got. Thanks for tuning in, guys.